Hello, I'm Kay Easton from the Lytton Phil, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's talk on Newcastles around the world. Thank you for joining us. Can I just let you know that we will be recording the talk and the video will appear on our YouTube channel quite soon. Please can I ask you to make sure that you're muted during the talk. If you have any questions or comments at the end, you can use the chat facility or ask questions directly. The Lytton Phil, as many of you will know, has been open since the 12th of April, but we still have many restrictions in place, some of which will end soon and more to follow, hopefully, towards the end of June. Although we cannot have live events just yet in our building, we have produced this online series of talks. Most are free, but we do welcome donations, and thanks to those who have already done so. If you do wish to donate to help us continue with our valuable work, you can do so via our website. But on with tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce David Falkner, tonight's speaker. David, an OBE, studied history at York and spent most of his professional life at Northern Electric before becoming Director of Arts and Business for the North East and Cumbria. He has had two spells as a Newcastle City Councillor and was council leader in 2010-11. Since retirement, he has been running Newcastles of the World, and amongst other things, he is a trustee of the People's Theatre and is involved with several other community charities. Tonight's topic is Newcastle around the world. Please welcome David Falkner.
Thank you very much, Kay, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to talk about Newcastles around the world, Newcastles of the world. I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. You'll be pleased to know you don't have to just look at the gallery, but here's what really, as the publicity notice said, a bit of a mix of a travelogue, maybe to whet your appetite for places that you might like to put on your visiting list when the day ever comes that we are allowed to travel freely again. But it's also about the organisation that's called Newcastles of the World that I have the pleasure of coordinating, and which we coordinate from here, from Newcastle upon Tyne. So I'm going to do share screen now, and here we go. So this is our logo. This is Newcastles of the World, and the obvious thing you would say, well, what's the origin? What's it all about, really? We've identified more than 100 places around the world called Newcastle in their own language, in the English language, of course, many of them, but in their own language, in translation to English. And it's a bit like about a third world discoverer. We're still discovering new ones. I've recently discovered really quite a lot of them in Afghanistan and Iran. But what's the origin of the name? Well, pretty much the same for everywhere. It's where the town, the city, the community had a fortification, and for some reason or another, it was destroyed. It fell into disrepair and had to be rebuilt. And very often, the name of the town or the city picked up that name, Newcastle, which is, of course, what happened with us, having gone through Ponzalia and Manchester. We became Newcastle in the 11th century, and many of the Newcastles in the English-speaking world take the name directly from some connection with ourselves, and I'll touch on one or two of those as we go along. We are an organisation, and that stems from a decision made in Japan, a place called Shinshiro, Newcastle, in 1998, where the mayor of that city invited a number of other places who he was kind of contemplating a twinning arrangement with. And he thought, well, maybe if they were places that share the same name as ourselves, that would be a good start, an obvious place to start. So he invited a small number of Newcastles to Japan, and they've been meeting in conference as a summit, a gathering every 2 years since. Until the pandemic spoiled the sequence, but I'll touch on that as well. I don't expect you to be able to see this, but it just gives you a view of where all these Newcastles are. There's quite a lot in the States, on the left-hand side of the screen. There are quite a lot in Italy, Castelnuovo's in Italy. Majority of the rest are in Europe, Western Europe perhaps, but there's a scattering right across the world. And that's what makes it an interesting organization to try and pull together and to compare and contrast not only the places, but the lifestyles that people lead. Of that larger number, here's a smaller number of them. These are the ones that are really partners in our organization. So we're in the 5 main continents, but probably half of them are in Europe. And I intend to touch on each one of these very briefly, just to give you a flavoring of what each town and city is about. Taking those 17 in total, it doesn't matter what their size is. If they're interested in being part of our network, then they're of equal value to us. And we have all sorts of different sizes of Newcastles, from the very small in the Czech Republic and in Latvia, up to the larger ones over 100,000, of which we'd be included, of course, one in Malaysia, which is bigger still, one in Australia, and one in South Africa. So a mix. But then maybe there's a cluster in the middle there between 10 and 50,000. And a number of these ones have tended to perhaps develop a bit of an additional relationship with other, maybe not too far distant Newcastles, which are of a similar size and similar characteristics. So there's networks within networks, if you like. So I'm just going to touch on some of them, and I mentioned Shinshiro in Japan, and where all of this started. It's the site of really an extremely famous battle in Japanese history, the Battle of Nagashino, or Shitaragara, and it was the first battle when guns were used, matchlock muskets were used, and it kind of changed the nature of warfare and the balance of power between the different clans in Japan. It was the defeat of the Takeda clan and its samurai. And the castle, the fortification that the city of Shinshiro had and defended successfully, now that castle is pretty much razed to the ground. But the importance of the battle makes it something that features very strongly in their own heritage, their own history. Every July the 6th, they have a major reenactment of thousands of people. Folks travel from many, many parts of Japan to enjoy this reenactment. They also have, as a separate event, a flag festival where there are many, many flags displayed which bear the crests of the armies that participated in that rather famous battle. And like many parts of Japan, of course, theatre is very important. Picture top left of cherry blossoms. It's one of the great attractions of the cherry blossom festivals in springtime. The rice fields, the paddy fields on the right-hand side, and the big drums that you may have heard performed on tours in this country. So Shinshiro, typical Japanese place in many ways, but with that special place in military history. Just staying for the moment with the ones who are the original members of this gathering in Japan. This is Neuburg in Germany, in Newcastle on the Danube, perched on the Danube, a corner of the great river. A beautiful towering Renaissance castle, very dramatically positioned. And one of their great features is every 2 years they have a castle festival, a Renaissance festival, where it seems almost the entire population dresses up in Renaissance garb, and really kind of enjoys it too. But it's positioning itself. It's located north of Munich. There are some high technology industries around about, including Audi, a very highly automated Audi factory, and a factory where Eurofighters are produced and all the pilots operate from. So an interesting place, which I had the pleasure of visiting. The third of the kind of big three who kind of really have been driving this whole thing since the collective got together is Nishatel in Switzerland, the French-speaking capital of a canton with the same name, on Lake Nishatel, renowned for its watch industry, and now deriving from that really, very high value micro-technology, high-tech industry and research, but also perhaps of equal importance to many of us, it's one of the great centers of Swiss chocolate. It's where Suchard established his factory and still there in 1826, so nearly 200 years of chocolate making. And they have an annual festival of chocolate, which they call Chocolatissimo, which allows all these many artisans, they call themselves artisans, display some wonderful creations in chocolate, and they introduce new flavors for chocolate in choc bars each year as part of this wonderful festival. So again, beautifully positioned on water, on Lake Nishatel, Neuburg on the Danube, Newcastle upon Tyne. You know, there are some kind of common features and factors here. This also part of the original gathering of Newcastles, and still involved, very much so, but very different to the other three, and much larger, is Newcastle in KwaZulu-Natal province, the old Natal province in South Africa, positioned halfway between Durban and Johannesburg, named not after Newcastle upon Tyne. It's named after the British colonial secretary at the time the place was discovered or established, the Duke of Newcastle, and it was created really as a sort of post halt between Durban and Johannesburg. It's the third largest city in the province after Durban and Pietermaritzburg. It's one of the strong centers of industry in South Africa: coal, steel, chemicals, textiles, and historically it's important because of its location in that, as the name KwaZulu-Natal implies, in the Zulu territories, important in the story of the battlefields, the Zulu Wars. Rope's Drift is not very far away, Islandwara, all of these kind of famous names of battles that we would all recognize. And that's driving a lot of heritage-based tourism. So their economy is slowly but surely developing around tourism. On the right-hand, bottom right of the picture, you can see is a place where I've stayed a couple of times. It's called Haggard's Hill Drop, and it's a place that was owned by Rider Haggard. You remember the author Rider Haggard of King Solomon's Mines and Alan Quatermain. And I didn't know too much of the story when I first went there, but the peace settlement of the Second Boer War was actually signed in this building that Rider Haggard owned for a few years. And top left, you can see a temple. It's the largest, it's a Hindu temple, Shiva temple in the Southern Hemisphere, so they say. So an interesting place. It was a smallish town of 40 to 50,000 until democracy came and the boundaries of local government were completely redrawn in South Africa. So towns like that were then given all of the Bantustans, the traditional townships around them, and suddenly the population went up certainly 7 or 8-fold. And if you think we have really strong issues in local government here, the issues that they have in just trying to bring up the standard of living and the quality of life in those townships, being responsible for not just the traditional services that we think of here, but also water, electricity, sanitation, and so on. Really quite a challenge for them. But a truly interesting place with some lovely people that we've met. Now, I'm not going to talk about Newcastle upon Tyne, but when I give this presentation to other than Newcastle upon Tyne audiences, of course, I have to include Newcastle upon Tyne. and say something about it. The only point I'd make tonight is that there's a picture of a man in a Newcastle United shirt, well, somewhat predictably perhaps, and he's an interesting fellow because he was an asylum seeker from Iraq who came and settled in Newcastle and felt that he was made so welcome that he actually changed his name by deed poll to Peter Newcastle. So that is Peter Newcastle, originally from Iraq. Newcastle under Lyme is the other one, although there are quite a few in the British Isles, but Newcastle under Lyme is the one of any kind of size and consequence. Basically it's a market town of around 75,000, but with some other towns around it within the municipal borough boundaries. A very pleasant place with a history of coal mining, the Staffordshire coal mine, not as important as the Northumberland and Durham one, but important enough in its way. And the town houses Keele University. So if you can imagine, if you think Newcastle and Northumbria are important to us in relation to the size of our city and its economy, just think how much more important Keele University, a very large university, would be to a much smaller market town like Newcastle under Lyme. Changing the size and the emphasis completely, this is a small town that hosted our conference in 2014. It is literally right on the border of the Czech Republic and Austria, Nova Hrady. The Iron Curtain literally ran along the boundary of the town. And when we visited there, they told us that they took all the barbed wire down and the sentry posts and so on. And then a few years later, they decided to put a stretch of barbed wire back up again because they wanted their people to understand, what had happened during the years of communism. And they created on the border a museum and some interpretation there, which is sensible. They actually have two castles. They're called Newcastle, but their old castle is still there. The old castle is the one underneath the flag, 14th century castle, but underneath it is something which is early 19th century, and it's more of a chateau than a castle, but they call it the castle, the Newcastle, and it currently houses the University of South Bohemia, some of their departments. So a small town of very, very welcoming people. This is another town where its castle obviously dominates and is very, very important historically. In fact, Nyborg in Denmark, which is on the island of Funen, to the west of the main island. It was the capital of Denmark for over 200 years, and the first parliament, or the first constitution, were established there. So this is very much part of their history and heritage. They are currently, I was a little bit surprised that this hadn't happened a long time ago, but they're aiming for World Heritage status for the castle, and I think it would be an enormous boost to the town if that were to happen. Population of around 30,000 for the municipality, about half of that were within the boundaries of the town. A very affluent little town. This place in Slovakia called Novozamki, where, like so many of these Newcastles, think of us on our relationship with Scotland and the importance of borders and boundaries, and you see where the fortifications come from. Well, this is part of many different countries over the years. For a long time, it was part of Hungary, part of Slovakia now, and the man who you can see at the bottom with the flowers is their mayor. He's an opera singer. He was born in Novozamki. He began his career singing in many of the major opera houses, but began to think that the town that he came from was rather poorly managed and poorly led, and therefore decided to stand as mayor when the elections came up, and won election and has been re-elected since. This is Ottokar Klein, opera singer. I don't know whether he gives him a performance at the council meetings or not, but I have met him, and he's very impressive gentleman. It doesn't have a castle standing anymore. You can see the image of how the castle was and its formation, but it was destroyed in many battles that took place between the Austro-Habsburg Empire, the Ottoman Empire. I'm afraid that there's very little of it left. A few walls, but that's about it. You might be more familiar with this Newcastle, one of the larger ones, Newcastle in Australia, Newcastle, New South Wales. Interesting in a way, its position, about two hours on a train north of Sydney, takes its name directly from Newcastle upon Tyne, established on what briefly was regarded as a coal river. But it's now taken over from Newcastle upon Tyne as being the world's largest coal exporting port. But at the same time, you can see a lovely beach there, and it's also one of Australia's major, if not the major, the most important beach for surfing in Australia, and the national and sometimes international championships are held there. On the Hunter River, you can see the picture of the river. You can see the cathedral towering over the river and the town centre. It's got a football team called the Jets, who did win the Australian Championship a few years ago, but since then have been as unsuccessful as ours has been, sadly. But nonetheless, it's a very Australia, sporting nation. It's a very sporting community, and it's undergoing quite a lot of regeneration at the moment, which is very good news. And the population is on the rise. This is another of the very small Newcastles, about to be reorganised. I don't think out of existence, but you know the penchant that local government has of amalgamating boundaries. They're very upset at announcements that they're going to be subsumed into a larger municipality and worried about losing their individuality. But it's a Newcastle that has, as you can see, pretty dramatic castle as well. And a lot of its tourism is based around that. The castle itself has got rooms now where you can stay, and history, tradition of a kind of small rural community is paramount. They take part, as you can see a picture on the left, a lot of different festivals, including a huge festival, national festival of song that they have in the Latvian capital Riga every 5 years. So Jaunpils is the name, Jaunpils in Latvia. This is, of all the many castles, this is probably the greatest. This is a place called Akhasika. It's in Georgia. It's very close to the border with Turkey and Armenia. Again, because of all those border tribulations down the centuries. But it's a very large castle, and you can see from the size of it that in the same way that at one time our castle within the wider castle walls had quite a lot of people living in it, and a lot of activity going on, not just the technical kind of side of the fortification. The same was true with Akhasika's castle. It was renovated about 10 years ago. It was reopened dramatically with an international concert that was fronted by, he died not so long ago, but Charles Aznavour. You may remember Charles Aznavour, you think Frenchman, but of Armenian stock. His family came from Akhasika, and it's recently acquired very significant tourism prominence within the country because of the investment and the refurbishment of the castle. And very close to it, just a short drive away, is an old cave complex called Vadzia, World Heritage Site, where many people lived until an earthquake sheared off the front of the caves. But they still have a chapel inside there, and it's very interesting just to get the sense of how people lived in those circumstances. So there it is. It's on the boundaries of Turkey on one side, Russia on the other, struggling a bit as a nation, feeling the pressure of Mother Russia and some annexation in the north of the country. But Akhasika is towards the south and is very strong with its kind of Armenian culture and its singing. There's a picture there of one of the many singing groups, probably the most important of it, who reflect the very special and unique polyphonic sound singing that you get from that part of the world. This is the most recent of the Newcastle to join our group, as it were. It's in Montenegro, Herceg-Novi, Newcastle. It's at the entrance to the Bay of Kotor. That's a fjord, the southernmost fjord in Europe. It's incredibly beautifully situated. And it has not just one castle, not just two castles, it has three castles. You can see one of them in the picture to the right. That's the highest one, towering over the fjord and the center of the town. And it's used for Montenegro's National Film Festival every autumn, outdoor film festival, and many other cultural activities too. But its other castles are equally important in the story of the town, the history of the town, and the way in which it's presenting and projecting itself. And then we have Kotobaro, which in what we call the Metro District, the wider, just outside the city boundaries, as it were, the sprawl, the urban sprawl, is 500,000. So to that extent, it's probably the largest of the Newcastles, unless you, if you use the same comparison, perhaps we might compare it with Tyneside. But nonetheless, in terms of what is called Kotobaro, it's a very large place. Its castle is really a fortified palace. It's where the Sultan of Kelantan, the province, lives, and it's a very strict Islamic part of the country. Politically, it has its own party, and it's a Islamic religious party. It's very conservative in its traditions and its activities, but there's something very distinctive about that culture of Kelantan. It's known for very highly skilled artisans, lots of very diverse cottage industries, textiles, jewelry, shadow puppetry, kites, those big drums that you see. They're called Rabana, I think, in Malaysia. So it is slowly but surely, I suppose, becoming a little more kind of westernized. And it was interesting that when we connected with them, they were wishing to be part of Newcastles of the world. They do send representatives to our conferences. They do connect with us on projects. So that's good news and encouraging. And for such a conservative place, I was staggered to see how much major street art they have. This is a tiny snapshot of the street art in the alleyways of Kotobaro. And then Newcastle in Canada, just finishing from our main partners with North America. This is quite a small town, around about 10,000 people. Its wider municipality of Clarington used to be called Newcastle. It used to take its name from Newcastle. But Newcastle now kind of acknowledges itself as not much more than a village, although it has got quite a nice port area, and there are quite a lot of new houses developing on the banks of Lake Ontario. Two pictures on the right of interest. The one at the bottom, place you probably can't read it, but it's called Dockville. It's a Wild West, essentially a film set. Lots and lots of films are shot there, and it's a great tourist attraction. But this is where you can enjoy a drink you can enjoy liquor in the saloon. You can see how the local farmers went about their wares, run by an eccentric man who's pictured there. Above him is not the town hall now, but it's the community hall. It was the town hall before, when it had its own council status, but it was built for the town by a man called Massey, and this is Massey, who became part of Massey Ferguson. You might recognize the name, agricultural machinery, Massey Ferguson, very, very big still across the world. But the Massey family came from Newcastle, established their agricultural machinery business in Newcastle, first of all, and they, as donors, they built this rather nice town hall, community hall, where we held our 2016 Newcastles of the World conference. And then just finishing off on amongst the main partners, a couple of Newcastles in the USA who are involved as core partners, one in Indiana, very typical in the sense that they seem to they're completely obsessed with basketball and baseball. Basketball in particular, they house the Indiana Hall of Fame Basketball Museum, which is their kind of biggest attraction. But they're best known for the fact that that Wilbur Wright, one of the Wright brothers, was born in Newcastle, Indiana, and they have an annual festival, a museum, a Wilbur Wright museum, and a festival, a flight around that. But the Newcastle in Pennsylvania, which is much the same size, just kind of has the look, I haven't been to either of them, but has a look and feel of being a different sort of place with its rather stately buildings. They've got an enormously important area, which is on the National Historical Register of the states, where there's, you see top right hand side there, I'm not sure how well it comes out, but there are hundreds of houses, beautiful and interesting houses, dating from Victorian times and a little bit before in some cases. And it's one of the really important features of the town. And close by, it's part of Amish country. So part of the promotion of both of these towns is not just what rests within the town boundaries, but the wider areas that they are a part of. So Newcastle in Pennsylvania, Newcastle in Indiana. I mentioned that there were many of them in Italy. There's one of them that we're beginning to talk to about joining as a core partner, and that's one called Castelnuovo Rangoni on the right-hand side there. It's the center of a very important pork producing area. That's why they've got a statue of a pig in the middle of their town hall, right in front of their castle. It's in Modena. It's in fact the Pavarotti family have their the family graves are within the boundaries of Castelnuovo Rangona. So there's the graves of the family, including Luciano Pavarotti, are there. So that's the kind of travelogue part of it. But just very quickly now about, well, what do we try and do as an organization called Newcastles of the World when we have links with all of these? What do we try to do? Well, we're a small organization, so there's no point in trying to over-egg it. But there's a number of areas where we have managed to make some useful and interesting connections. And I've listed a few of them here. We're willing to work with any of the Newcastles if they want to create a sporting link, a sports tour, if they want to link Rotary clubs, if they want to do charitable projects. We've often raised money for some of the poorer Newcastles from some of the better off ones. We link, we're very strong on promoting each other to each other as tourist venues, of course, to build on that kind of common heritage. We got individual and school exchanges that have happened. We have youth councils from time to time, meeting each other, working with each other. So that's our ambition, really, to exploit what we feel we have in common and the individual connection, the connection between people and organizations that we've built up over a few years now, see if we can promote collaboration in these areas that I've listed. So just a few examples. We have a collaboration that's been running for a few years now between Newcastle upon Tyne and Newcastle Kwazulu-Natal. It's a drama project, theatre project, and it involves theatre groups in both of the towns who performed in each other's towns. And the most recent piece of work was really to compare what life is like for young people growing up in two very, very different places, two very different cultures. And we're hoping to raise some more money soon to take the next stage of that drama project on. This is, I don't expect you to be able to read any of this, you don't need to, but our most recent cultural project happened around the turn of the year and into January, February of this year. This town, Nova Zamki, which I mentioned earlier in Slovakia, was successful in bidding to become the Slovak City of Culture for 2020. And as part of that, we developed a project involving artists, digital artists, mainly film and photography and other digital art, connecting these different artists. We had, of course, the expectation that we would have exhibitions in a venue that hundreds, if not thousands of people would come to, but we were very limited by the pandemic and the various closures of galleries that venues that's happened in Nova Zamki as elsewhere. But nonetheless, we've been able to do an awful lot of online stuff, and we managed to connect some of these artists one with another, and we hope they'll continue to work together. You can see just some small pictures of some of the work that was produced as part of the project. We did a poetry project when Newcastle upon Tyne was the host of the Newcastles of the World Conference in 2012. We asked people to write some poems about their own Newcastle, but we also got the lady who's in the middle there and with Mandela at the top. She's called Lindiwe Mabuza. She was born in Newcastle, KwaZulu-Natal, lived her early life there before she became a major political diplomatic figure. And she's a well-known poet and author in South Africa. So we asked her to write the foreword and to give us a poem of her own, which she did for this publication, which we were very pleased about. But we've also done music projects involving schools in different Newcastles and other participants. We took a song that used to be sung at St. James's Park by a man called Ronnie Lambert, who went under the musician's name of Busker. He had a song called Home Newcastle. It was a minor hit, and he sadly died. But we asked his widow, could we use the tune and get our different Newcastles to write their own words and do their own performance of this, which they did. And here's a whole range of them. We even had barbershop singers on the beach in Newcastle, Australia. We had instrumental performance by a pipe band in Switzerland. We had a sort of heritage type performance in Canada. At the bottom, we've got the Felling Male Voice Choir who sang it for us and sang at our conference, sang the song at the conference as well. So we wrote our own lyrics, and we were able to put all of this on our website, on our YouTube page. We've got publications about this, about the different places that are part of our network. This was the most recent one, published in 2018, and that represented 20 years since the very first conference in Shinshiro, Japan, in 1998. So we've been selling this through Amazon and the Newcastle libraries or the stockists. And when we launched it, we had an exhibition about Newcastles of the world in the City Library, and we encourage and provide material for other people to have similar exhibitions to tell the story of their Newcastles and their global connections with other Newcastles in their own libraries. We have a cookbook where we had recipes from all our main Newcastles. We've got a jigsaw that we reproduced there from a photograph that we put together recently. But we have serious pieces of research as well. We've done not a huge publication, but an important publication nonetheless, which looks at the coal mining heritage of many of the Newcastles. So Newcastle upon Tyne, I mentioned Newcastle, Australia, as such a hugely significant port with coal mines in their hinterland. Many of the American Newcastles take their name from us because of the connections with coal mining. We've done a little bit of work with the Mining Institute on this kind of issue. So Newcastle in Wyoming, Newcastle in Colorado, all taking their name from us, from North East mining engineers who helped them sink their shafts and start the communities around them, and therefore picked up the name Newcastle because of that connection. And I mentioned earlier the Staffordshire coalfield and the inclusion of Newcastle and Lyme in all of that. So a little booklet about the common coal mining heritage. We try to piggyback some of our activities on existing things that are happening. So if you look at Herceg Novi in Montenegro, they have an annual mimosa festival. Their spring starts very early, and the mimosa blooms really from late January and into February. And they have a wonderful festival on the edge of the Adriatic and the Bay of Corto there. So they pioneered this idea of a Newcastles of the World Day as part of their festival. And we had music, we had people who came from other Newcastles to perform. We had calligraphers, we had little bits of drama, and we had an exhibition which ran for 2 or 3 weeks in one of their venues. We created this thing called the Newcastle's Passport, which is the core of our tourism promotion offer. And essentially what we do is we ask each Newcastle that wants to be part of this, if people from other Newcastles come to visit you, is there something special that you can offer them that makes it, an extra important occasion? So the Newcastles of the World organization, we haven't got lots of smart tasks. We haven't got a lot of money behind us. We're essentially a friendship organization, but we do think that we can encourage these exchanges between young people and tourism between different Newcastles. Many's the time that I've welcomed people from other Newcastles around the world, often from Australia in particular, where they want to check out their heritage. They want to find out more about the Northeast, the places in the Northeast where their ancestors might have lived. So we can do all of that, but we actually, we put something special together if they wish to be part of this kind of passport plan. It's just something they download, but we don't ask them to go through too many hoops to prove they're from Newcastle. But here's an idea of what we do in Shinshiro in Japan. If you're visiting from another Newcastle, you get all these kind of benefits: free entrance in their museums, you can attend a tea ceremony, you can wear a samurai costume, you can dine with a host family, you get a guided city tour. This is just Pat Lowry there. This is just something that we think makes it special. If you say, well, why should I go and visit Newcastle? Shinshiro, I want to go to Japan or Kyoto. And you say, well, actually, this is Newcastle, Shinshiro. If you're from our Newcastle, you will have the red carpet put out for you, and it'll be made very, very special for you. So that's the Newcastle's passport. We've got about 10 of our Newcastles who are part of this arrangement. We try and do a calendar each year. It's been snookered, of course, by COVID in 2020 and in 2021. But the whole idea is that we list all the kind of major events that go on. So if you're thinking of visiting another place, Newcastle in Neuburg in Germany or whatever, we tell you in advance in this annual calendar when the major events are on, so you can plan it. So, you know, there's nothing worse than you go and visit a place and you've missed something by 2 days, which is an absolutely outstanding part of their year. So we want to avoid that by flagging up all the things of particular interest that people can enjoy if they visit other Newcastles. And then just finishing off now, there are some things which are really kind of important to share information and knowledge. And at one of our conferences, we spent time, we came together, we said, what are the things that, irrespective of our size, irrespective of the fact that we're in different parts of the world, that's important for all of us, and we listed them, and we now have on our website an opportunity to share information, research papers, awards, interesting things that are happening in these areas. I'll just pick a couple there. Town and district centres. You know, a lot of places, and it was true in Newcastle upon Tyne for years, of course, are losing population, and it's true for some of the smaller ones that their young people go and study at the university somewhere else and then never come back again. You know the story. So the importance of making sure that you can do all you can to keep a viable town centre or a district centre, whether it's like our NE1 on an organised basis, or whether it's just more strategic investment, that kind of thing, putting on events and activities that draw people in, that make them think and believe it's a viable place, all of that. Towards the bottom there is something called the Smart City. We've recently been exchanging information about how we're all using technology to improve services for our citizens. This is when we were talking about the future of town and city centres, there was a conference at Northumbria University that we drew in people from Neuburg in Germany, Newcastle in Australia, and one or two others. So piggybacking on something that the university was doing to develop and to take forward a topic that's of interest to all of us. Our castle managers are beginning to connect. We're looking at a project where we can try and work out what are the best ways to put an educational offer to schools and young people. What are the best ways to do live performance in our castles, that kind of thing. And we have visits between us, Denmark to Neuburg in Germany, and that kind of thing are fairly regular. These were our conferences every 2 years, but we've missed one out now. So the aim really, it's a friendship organization, and therefore it's a friendship conference, but we try and pick a theme each time, a theme that picks up one of those common areas of interest and takes it forward, and we learn from each other. And this was some pictures from different conferences at the bottom from when we hosted in Newcastle upon Tyne. We got lots of schools involved, which is a pretty typical thing to do. This was the one in Canada in 2016, where we all displayed our wares in a street market, and the local population were able to come and meet us and find out more about our towns and cities. And this is the last conference back in Japan, in Shinshiro, on the 20th anniversary, where they were absolutely wonderful in getting almost their entire town interested in Newcastles of the world, but very, very, very welcoming. And we had, they're not big conferences. We had 85 visiting delegates plus the host city ones. About a third of them were in a parallel youth conference, about 10 from Newcastle upon Tyne. That's about the number who travel. As far as Newcastle upon Tyne is concerned, you pay your own way. It's not something that the local authority or anybody else kind of supports. So it's just something that's important to us, and we get the opportunity to combine our own interest in travel, of course, as part of that. And these are our kind of main themes that as a development plan, if you like, culture, tourism, education and business, talked about some of these and given you an idea of some of the projects. Young people particularly are at the heart of this, and we really do encourage exchanges. The last year and a half has been terrible for that, but we're just hoping that as things open up again, maybe we can get away from sitting in front of screens as we're doing tonight, and people can actually begin to meet their friends or make new friends in other Newcastles and enjoy the experience and enjoy learning about the other cultures. And we had our own first dedicated youth conference in Japan as a sort of forerunner to our main conference at the back end of 2017. And all of these people are in a network now and working with each other, supporting each other and developing things like this, education exchanges. We've got a project on learning from other Newcastle where they make videos for the benefit of young people in their sister Newcastles about what life is like in their town. We're developing a homestay scheme, which we hope we can get going next year. We're developing a tourism app specifically designed for young people, so we can guide them as to what the best experience is if they're visiting another Newcastle. This is Denmark is leading our learning from other Newcastles video project, so they've already done theirs. Japan have done theirs. We're about to do ours quite soon. This is an example of where we were able to, for a young man in the middle there from Northumbria University, we were able to give him a year's placement in Shinshiura in Japan, in a company. He's a technical engineering student, and this is a company that makes machine tools, which was of great interest to him. We managed to get him a year's placement in Shinshiura. We'd like to do more of that. We have material for tools projects that British Council helped us develop, and which we're going to update in the future. And finally, we have a newsletter. Some of you might even be on the mailing list. You'd be very welcome to be on it. Every 3 months, 2 or 3 months, we have a nice colourful newsletter with news and features from all the Newcastles. And it becomes a way of keeping us all together and a way of sharing what's going on with one another. And we do interviews with mayors. Here's an interview with the new mayor in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Find out more about him, you know, tell us your background. How did you get involved in politics? What's the big challenges for your town? What would you say to people to persuade them to visit your Newcastle? You know, very much the heart of what we're trying to do. So here we are. This is just the two of us. Zélie is my colleague, as she runs a lot of the projects, and she's just part-time. I'm part-time, but I'm just a volunteer, but I do the kind of coordination and the finance because a number of our Newcastles kindly pay us a little subscription to help towards Zélie's work and to help develop the projects that we've talked about. So I'm sorry, I've probably gone on a bit too long, but that's our Newcastles of the world, how we work together, what our ambitions are for the future. And I'd be interested to know if any of you have been to any of them or have any comments or questions or experiences to share. Back to you, Kay.
Well, David, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. And I think if we weren't all desperate to go travelling before your talk, we're all absolutely desperate to pack our suitcases from now on, really. Really very interesting indeed. I'm just wondering whether the Lytton Film might be able to get itself involved in some way or another. I think we'll have a think about that and get back to you. But certainly the Newcastle, the passport scheme sounds like something we might be able to join up with. But we'll think about that and talk further. Has anybody got any questions for David?
Hello, David. I work at Segadunum in Wallsend.
Yeah.
We've just started a partnership with the Children's University of Australia, who have a school in Newcastle in New South Wales.
Oh, really?
So I've just had a look at your website, but I mean, maybe I could have a look. Maybe I could speak to you or email you with any.
Yes, do Virginia. Yeah, absolutely. Just send me an email, newcastlesoftheworld@gmail.com. You can see the on the website how to get hold of us. Just tell us what you're doing, and if you think there's any way we can help, that would be great.
Because it's sort of early stages, talking about sharing videos and doing pen pal things and video tours of the local area.
Terrific. Well, they just got a brand new library in Newcastle, Australia, and it's very state-of-the-art digital library. And they've got a digital wall in which our team in Newcastle, Australia, have persuaded them to let us have space to do kind of rolling films of the different Newcastles. So we got our foot in the door there. We're also doing a little bit of work at the moment. I'm not sure where it'll go, but with adult learners, trying to connect them with Newcastle City Learning here. And we're also just about to try and do a little link between the elders councils of Newcastle upon Tyne and the one in Japan, so they can share ideas about what's life's like for older people in the different Newcastles. So yeah,
Oh, great to find out a bit more. Very timely. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Has anybody been to any of these other Newcastles?
Are you hoping to have a conference next year, perhaps?
Yes, we're hoping it'll be springtime. That means it'll be 2 years after it should have been. 2 years is about the limit KLM to keep my ticket open. Well, I think I've probably lost that actually, but yes, yeah. And the theme that we've got is the theme of smart cities. So we're looking at, I mean, Newcastle upon Tyne does pretty well in this kind of developing digital technologies. I think the Newcastles that have got universities tend to be, have a lot to say and are doing quite a lot in this field. So Nishatel, Newcastle, Australia, and Newcastle upon Tyne tend to be the kind of leaders on it, and that's the theme for the conference.
Of all the Newcastles that you've mentioned, and of those that you haven't visited, which would be your top of the list to visit? Well,
I went to Akhasika in Georgia. You might think, oh, crikey, it's an awful long way away, but we'd connected with them. We'd made a connection with them, and somebody from the Georgian embassy in London kept saying to us, "Oh, we'd like to take you to Akhasika, and we'll come with you." And they have a sort of Georgians in the UK type organisation. They were looking to do some twinning, I suppose. And we kept saying, no, we don't want to accept this free hospitality. But eventually it became embarrassing to keep on saying no. So we went, 4 of us went in 2010. And it was just such an interesting place. And the people are lovely, the hospitality, the culture, absolutely fascinating. And we stayed in the capital. We flew to Tbilisi, the capital, and stayed there for a couple of days before we went on to Akhasika. And Tbilisi is the most stunning city. I mean, you wouldn't think of putting it on your travel list, perhaps, but it is just a breathtakingly beautiful and interesting city. So Georgia, Akhasika, I've been back again. We took 8 students from Newcastle University who were part of the traditional music course that they have at the university there, that they put on, at the Sage sometime. I think they have workshops at Sage as well. We took 8 students to a music conference, a big musical event that they organized in that castle that I showed you a picture of. And we brought some young dancers from Newcastle in South Africa as well. So there were kind of artists from 3 different countries, 3 different Newcastles taking part. And that was wonderful. So I just have wonderful memories of Akhasika in Georgia.
Would anybody else like to say anything?
I'm just looking at Anne's comment, speaking to part of the Elders Council. Yeah, of course, yes. Yes, of course, Anne, yeah. So Mary knows an awful lot about Newcastles of the world, but we try and involve our youth council, our elders council, but on an individual basis. You know, we're not expecting them to fund anything. They do their own fundraising for or the individuals do their own fundraising to travel as part of our delegations. But it's great that there's such support and interest.
Well, we've had some very nice comments from people on chat, thanking you so much for a very interesting talk. And I'd like to echo that on behalf of everybody and on behalf of Lytton Phil. Thank you so much for giving up your time. We did schedule this talk for March last year, and we had to cancel, obviously, but I'm so glad that you've joined us tonight, and just thank you so much. It was much appreciated, and good night, and see you again soon.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye now.
Bye.